So my name is Sherrice. I'm from Philippines. Yep, born in Manila. What am I doing? So I am currently studying Bachelor of Health Science Physiotherapy. So I'm in my second year, and as part of kind of learning more, like getting experience for physio, I volunteered to help out with the rugby team this year, and yeah, for the bays.
Yep.
And I was kind of like the physio for the season before it was cut short, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Physio. I first wanted to be like a lawyer, but then I went into law firm for like a placement, like a career pathway sort of thing in high school, and then I was like, I don't know if I can sit around in an office all day. Like I'd probably go crazy. But in high school, I played a lot of netball, and I actually fractured this finger once and this one twice. So I spent a lot of time with my physio, and she was so sweet, and it was just nice talking to her and building a friendship. And I was like, oh, her job's pretty good. She gets to talk to people and she gets to help out. And I also learning about kind of the anatomy and how the way the body works. It's so interesting, and how it all comes together and works so well. Yeah. And I just started why don't I become a physio? And here I am.
Nice.
What I love about it? I think it's quite rewarding. They definitely ask a lot of kind of time. You need to put in a lot of time to kind of remember things, memorize, different muscles. There's so many muscles, so many joints and bones in the body. But kind of once you learn about it, once you get your head around it, it makes sense. And you're whoa, this is actually how it works. This is kind of what happens when things go bad. And it's once you know it, it's wow, this is really cool. It's so interesting, how they all work together. Yeah, that's kind of my favorite thing. And also just being able to help other people, with my family, when they're oh, Sherrice, my back hurts, can you check it out? I'm okay, and massage their backs and do that. It's pretty cool. And they're oh, it actually feels better. Thanks so much for helping me. And you're ooh, I did that. Yeah.
So you can say
Oh yeah. Well, my family and my parents are very open. They're very supportive. So they're just oh, you just do whatever as long as you enjoy it. Because they don't want me to go to something just for the money, And then a few years later, you're oh, I'm so miserable. I hate this. So at first they were just oh, cool, be a lawyer. And then I was never mind, I don't want to be a lawyer. They're ooh, physio is pretty cool too. I know typically when you see a Filipino person in the health healthcare's environment, you would think nurse, but then it's just physio is kind of a cool different job. Yeah, they're always supportive. They're ooh, physio, that's pretty good money, isn't it? And I'm oh, I didn't know that, but yeah, cool, yeah.
Sweet. I guess do you get what I'm trying to ask?
Hey, sorry?
Do you get what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah. I guess, yeah, in my classes, I have a few Asian friends, a couple of Filipino friends, but there actually aren't a lot of us. But I don't know, it's not as hard, but kind of, I don't think about it too much until they start talking about culture. And because as physios in our course, we learn a lot about culture and making sure that you cater for different cultures. And then I realized, oh, I have to think about my culture and how I'm from Philippines. I have a different culture from the New Zealand culture. But most of the time, I don't feel that it's much of a hassle or hindrance or anything like that. But every once in a while, I'm oh, I realize that I'm the minority. Yeah.
What are
some challenges? I think definitely when I helped out with the rugby team, that's a very big challenge at the start. I was so nervous because I was I only did like a day, like a few weeks worth of practice. We only did a few strappings, and then like when I get into the actual game, like these guys are gonna be asking like, can you strap my knee? Can you strap my ankle? And I'll be like, okay. Like I was pretty sure I was like shaking the first time. I had to like rip off so many pieces of tape. I think it's just because it felt like they were expecting me to be like really good, like really effective. But then like I'm not too sure like if they knew that I was just like a student, like this is my first time, so I was really scared. That was a great challenge. And just being able to think on your feet, like especially if like guys get like knocked out, like you got knocked out of it, you got wounded, like guys start falling to the ground. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to run into the field. I don't know what to do. Like, do they get a concussion? Like, can you like, you know, what's a day? Like, you know, all that assessment. I just get so freaked out with that. But like, I guess I survived like throughout the season. Like, it was fine. We didn't get anything too bad. And I had like helps. I had help from like Chris, like the actual physio, and then a couple of third-year physios. So it was really good that I had help from them and kind of guidance, like going into kind of sport and even like uni. But also just success. Yeah, I think that would also be like a struggle, like a challenge. And in the end, I felt like it was a success because like I learned a lot and I felt more confident about my strapping now. Though like I still need a lot of practice, but it's just kind of like having that knowledge in the back of your head for like future, even just like, you know, even if you're going out like playing sport with your friends and like they, you know, accidentally injure themselves, so you can kind of quickly strap or like help them quickly ice. Become like a little sports physio, even just when you're playing around. Yeah. That's a good question. I definitely think I'd probably continue like doing rugby physio. Like it's helped me learn a lot because it is an option of mine, like in the future, to become maybe like a sports physio. And I think like they told us that in the course, I'm not too sure if they teach us too much about the strapping. So I was like, oh, I'm like really grateful that I had this opportunity. But my goal, I think, would be, you know, definitely to graduate. And maybe a couple of years of graduating, get familiar, get into like the clinic or hospital, and then after that maybe possibly specialize more into like hand physiotherapy sort of thing, and then hopefully like open up a clinic. I mean, that's kind of the goal. Yeah, like
big dreams.
Clinic. Yeah.
No, that's. What was it like? It
was kind of crazy because like I think New Zealand would have been kind of the first time I left the country, and it was just like seeing different cultures. Like, you know, you were in Philippines, you're so used to like seeing Filipinos, you talk Tagalog, and like that's it, like that's what you see. But when we went to New Zealand, it was like, whoa, like there's someone from a different country, you know, they've got blonde hair, they've got blue eyes, and it's like, whoa. You know, it's like young little girl. And in primary, like I think even in the primary that I went to, there wasn't a lot of like Filipinos, so it was kind of hard as well. I mean, like there were other Asians, but like, you know, it's different from like relating to like a Filipino person. I do remember when I was younger, I brought them rice for lunch, yeah, and then like obviously, and then I also had like a sandwich for morning tea. Okay, so you got rice for lunch, sandwich for morning tea, and then so I'm just here at morning tea, I'm eating my sandwich, and then a girl called me out and she was like, oh, like that's for lunch, like why are you eating your lunch? And I was like, this is lunch? And then so like I didn't eat my lunch that day, and I think from that day on I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna eat sandwiches for lunch, like I need to fit in, sort of thing. That kind of like changed the way that I thought about like food, and I was always kind of like, every time I had like rice or something, like a Filipino dish, I'd always kind of be like shy to like eat it in front of people. I don't know why. But yeah, I grew out of that obviously, but it was just kind of in my primary all the way to like intermediate. I kind of had that weird mentality, but thankfully I grew out of it. Like every time now I eat my Filipino food, they're like, oh, it smells so good, and I'm like, yeah, it tastes good too. Like
No, it's
Filipinos are they're definitely like family oriented. Like they love their families, they have big families, you know. Like I have my family living with me as well, like and they're also very like in a way, welcoming, or like they're always like, you know, in the Filipino household, like you come in and then they always like, come inside and eat, like they always make you eat, like and they're like, take a picture, come inside and eat, or like they have pretty good parties. And I think in the Filipino culture, like when you would hang out, when you would ask people to come, like maybe like eat, or like come to eat lunch outside, like you're expected to pay for it, sort of thing, if it's your birthday. But like here in New Zealand, it's like you pay for your own. I guess that's a different culture in a way, and I kind of grew accustomed to that. But like my parents would always be like, oh, like if you invite people, like it used to be you would pay for everyone, that sort of thing.
Sure.
I'm like so grateful that I'm still able to speak like Tagalog, understand Tagalog, like not as well as like my parents obviously, but like I'm so grateful that they were able to teach me the language and be able to like kind of keep it, because like a lot of my friends who are Filipino, who are born here, they can understand but they can't actually speak Tagalog, or like they have an accent, and I was just like, oh, like that's so, like that's such a shame. And like I do feel like sorry, but because you know, it's just like knowing the language, you just feel a bit like closer, or like you just, I don't know, you just feel Filipino more. But I don't know, that's just me. And
Would you say you feel connected to your roots?
Yeah. Like it makes you feel more connected, because it's like, oh, like you can speak Tagalog, and like when people like, you know, when kind of like the aunties or the uncles, like they're like, oh, you can speak Tagalog, or like, oh, like you're Filipino, like they get surprised. I'm like, yeah, like I'm still connected to my roots, like I still know like the words. And like when you come back to like Philippines, like you can understand everyone and you don't feel as like disconnected. Because I feel like if you know, like if you're in a foreign country and you don't know how to speak the language, it's like you kind of feel disconnected from like the locals, or like from everyone else. But like, yeah.
Thanks.
Like I think it's also just like spending time with my family. Like my parents speak Tagalog at home. My uncle, my auntie speak Tagalog at home, so it's like whenever I'm with them, I always try to like speak Tagalog just to kind of reinforce it and kind of like, yeah, like reinforce it and like get the hang of it again. Because like obviously it's like when you don't use something, you get a bit rusty in it. So yeah, like if I haven't spoken Tagalog in a while, like I get a bit of an accent, or like I forget words. So yeah, that's kind of how I stay in touch with my roots, like with my family, like we speak Tagalog, like we hang out, we you know, sit together, do our traditions and things like that.
It's a family.
There we go. Yeah, it was, I think because maybe in school I always like had friends. I did still have like Filipino friends, I did still have some Asian friends. I guess that could have kept me in touch with my roots. Like I kind of stay within the Asian community. Like I do have some like Kiwi friends and stuff, but like most of my closer friends are like Filipino, so I guess that keeps me in touch like in the Filipino community. But there are some things where, like I guess because with my family who have grown up in Philippines, like my aunties, my uncles, and my parents, they're so like, you know, Filipino, they know this culture, this is what they think. But like for my siblings, that we've grown up in like a mixture of cultures, so we're very like more open to like, oh, like someone said this because, you know, this is in their culture, like this is what's normal for them, and it could mean that it sounds kind of rude to us, or it sounds kind of like they're being mean, but like I guess that's just the way that they're growing, like that's the way that they're brought up, or like that's where they come from, so it's normal, or like it's understandable. So I guess that's what allowed me to kind of be more open and understanding to other people. Being more like, okay, like, you know, they had different backgrounds, they grew up differently, and so they are going to have a different viewpoint in the world, and that's just the way it is. Like you can't change someone's viewpoint because you think yours is superior or better. I guess I think I'd tell her like, oh, it's like, it's okay. I mean, it's a cliche. Like, it's okay to be different in a way. Like, I think I didn't embrace my Filipino side as much when I was younger. But I guess as I grew up, you know, into high school and into uni now, like, I'm very like, oh, I'm proud to be Filipino. Like, I like, you know, proud of language, and the culture. But I think, yeah, it's definitely, I would have told myself like, oh, you don't need to eat your sandwiches all day. Like, you can eat your rice, like you can, you know, speak your words. Because I think, I do remember, like, it's not Tagalog, but like I have a nickname in my household. Like, we call myself like Shobe. It's like kind of younger sister. It's not in Tagalog, but I think it's either like something in Chinese, like not Mandarin or Cantonese, but like maybe Hokkien or something like that. I don't know.
Sounds like Xiaomei.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm like, because like parts of my family are like Chinese. I've also got some Spanish. And like one of my aunties called me that in school, like in primary, and I was so embarrassed. I was like, like I was walking with a girl, like she was Kiwi, and she's like Shobi, like she pronounced it so wrong, and I'm like, oh, like no, don't call me that. Like I was kind of embarrassed, and I guess I didn't want to show that part of me. So I would have told myself like it's okay, like you know, just be proud. Like it's weird now, but it'll be okay. Like it's kind of be more open and be more proud, I think.
You could say it's like
physio is definitely well, to me I feel like it's quite hard work, but if you put your work into it, like it's definitely really rewarding. It's so interesting to learn about the body, and it's so wonderful to be able to help other people. Like I feel like physio is quite sought out. Like, you know, there's people who are always gonna, you know, hurt themselves, and you're gonna be the one to like rehabilitate them and help them back up. Like that's so like having that opportunity, having that chance is so like wonderful. Or like I find that it's really good. You know, it's like when someone falls down and you're that person to like give them the hand to get back up. You know, that like kind of that picture in your head. That's what I feel physio means to me. It can mean something else for other people, but like that's what, when I think of physio, that's kind of the image that I see. Like, and it's not just like fixing the broken arm. It's also like being able to make a relationship like with the patient and the person, like developing a friendship. Like I'm currently doing physio for my knee, like and I've made such like a good friendship with my physio. So it's not just like treat my knee. It's like it's like seeing my friend every week, and like my friend helps me get my knee better. So I think that's really cool. I don't know if that's sold physio. That's a really good example. I think, yeah, like being able to become a part of someone's life and, you know, positively impact them, like help them out. I also think it's a lot about like learning. Like physio, I feel like you're always learning, you're always trying to figure out what's the best kind of method to do this, what's the best method to treat like an ankle sprain, something like that. But it's also learning about yourself, like how you are kind of as a practitioner, how you are as a person, and learning about like your patient and the other person, like learning about their lives, like what they like to do, what their values are. Because I do like learning and meeting new people. Like I like learning about what they like to do, what are they passionate about. So for me, yeah, like becoming physio is all about like learning about physio, learning about people, learning about yourself. I don't know.
Alright, go for it.
So my take-home message is probably like, maybe it's a bit cliche to say it, but like, you know, doing something that you enjoy, doing something that you love and are actually passionate about, because yeah, it might be hard because, you know, maybe you have to like be brave and be like, okay, like I actually want to do this instead, and take like that leap. But yeah, because you don't really want to wake up one day and be like, well, like I'm miserable, like this is not something I want to do. And yeah, so probably just stick to kind of what you want to do, but making sure that you're like still learning and growing from it is definitely what I would say.